Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.
More countries are joining the diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. On the one hand, China is sharply criticizing these countries, threatening that they will pay a price for their actions. But on the other hand, Beijing also says it doesn't care. And an Australian senator is calling Beijing's reaction childish. Let's take a look.
In Europe, France and Germany say they need to take a united front toward Beijing, related to a diplomatic boycott of 2022 Winter Olympics.
We are in favor of a common position. We will see what is at stake during the next foreign ministers meeting or the next one. But this question needs to be dealt with as Europeans.
Top foreign policy officials from both nations met in Paris Thursday for a joint news conference. France's foreign affairs minister and Germany's foreign minister both agreed the nations should be on the same page. That followed remarks from French Education Minister Jean-Michel Blanqui, who said France would not join the U.S. boycott against Beijing. Germany's new foreign minister says a final decision will be made after further discussion, but she added that Germany will always be in agreement with its European friends. She also called for the EU to adopt a joint stance. Just one day before, International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach championed what he described as political neutrality.
The presence of governments, officials, is a purely political decision for each government. And also for this political decision, the principle of the political neutrality of the IOC applies.
That comment came after the UK and Canada joined the diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics, following the US, Australia, and New Zealand. China responded with apparent aggression on Thursday. Its foreign ministry warned that Australia, the UK, and the US will pay a price for their so-called mistaken acts. The ministry also referred to the boycott as political manipulation, using the Olympics as a platform. But Beijing seems to be sending mixed signals, as it has also said it doesn't care whether foreign officials will attend. One Australian senator drew attention to the contradiction, pointing out that it's like somebody saying, "I'm not going to come to your birthday party," and then you respond by saying, "Well, I wasn't going to invite you anyway." He called China's response childish and said it once again puts Chinese diplomacy in a very poor light.
And looking at China's retail sector, Walmart shuttered 4 stores across the country in just one day. The closures follow a larger pattern, as the shopping giant has shut down a total of 80 stores in 4 years. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has the story.
Is Walmart pulling out of China? The world's largest retailer appears to further downsize its footprint in China. Walmart reportedly closed 4 stores in mainland China on Tuesday, and a total of 80 stores in the country in the past 4 years. Among them was Walmart's first store in China, opened in 1996. But a quarter century after it entered China, Walmart is now at a crossroads. The company's revenue in China's hypermarket sector had fallen from top 2 in 2011 to 4th place, the lowest ranking since it entered the Chinese market. In 2021, Walmart's sales in China accounted for just over 2% of its global revenue. Walmart reportedly said they closed the stores because the leases expired. But many suspect that cutthroat competition from local players like e-commerce giant Alibaba may also play a role. In addition to Walmart, multinational retailers such as France's Carrefour are also struggling in China. According to media reports, Carrefour has closed 14 stores in China in the first 2 months of this year alone. In 2019, Japanese department store Takashimaya pulled out from China and planned to relocate its business to Southeast Asia. Economic experts told the Epoch Times that China's retail sector is suffering from a slowing economy. A jaw-dropping article from Chinese state media is sending shockwaves on the Chinese internet. State-controlled media outlet China Report published an editorial asking Communist Party members to have 3 kids. That's as the country is seeing the consequences of its one-child policy in the past decades. China's fertility rate, which was just 1.3 child per woman in 2020, is on par with aging societies like Japan and Italy. The article said that no party member can, for this or that subjective or objective reasons, not get married or not have children, nor can they have only one or two children for such reasons. The implementation of the three-child birth policy is a responsibility and obligation of every party member to fulfill the country's population development. It added that admittedly, some party members are no longer able to have children due to their age and health, but they can actively take an initiative to educate, guide, enable their own family members or people around them to actively and consciously implement the three-child policy. The article told party members, never be oblivious and let your family or people around you remain unmarried or childless. And never be oblivious and let your family or people around you have only one or two children for whatever excuses. Numerous major Chinese outlets, including other state media, reposted the article before it got taken down. It also went viral on Chinese social media Weibo. One netizen commented, "This shocked my value system. So if you don't get married or have 3 kids, you should be condemned by history." Another lamented about how much pressure ordinary Chinese people already face. For one family, the husband and wife have to raise 3 kids and take care of their parents. That's 4 seniors. They have to go to work at 8 a.m., leave the office at 9 p.m. It strains their energy, and then there's a $1,000,000 mortgage that they have to pay. I should rather stay single. Yet another wrote, "I just submitted my application to join the party this October. Now I'm hesitating." And one netizen commented, "I never agreed with the centrally planned fertility policy. Having children is a basic human right, and no party or organization should have the right to use legal means to interfere with it."
The CEO of Better.com has apologized for laying off hundreds of employees over a Zoom call last week. NTD's Faye Quarter has more on what he has to say and what happened.
The CEO of Better.com has apologized after his mass Zoom layoff made headlines worldwide.
And yet there's more.
Former employee Christian Chapman said it was the craziest layoff he's ever seen.
It was like the air got sucked out of the room. I mean, it was like being just kicked in the gut. It was very cold. It was very callous. It was very calculated.
Chapman, the father of 5 children, says all company devices and apps quickly stopped operating after the meeting.
And so as the reality set in, all of a sudden, everything goes blank remotely. Everything shut down. My laptop shut down. My Slack shut down. My Slack on my phone is shut down. I have no way to contact anybody. Any of my support structures, my community, my relationship, really my family is what my coworkers had become. I didn't have any way to contact them.
CEO Vishal Garg later issued a letter saying, "I want to apologize for the way I handled the layoffs," adding that he blundered the execution. Evan Neerman is the CEO of PR crisis management firm Red Banyan. Neerman says any other method would have been better than what Garg did.
A better way would have been rolling this out over an extended period and giving people the opportunity to hear directly from their managers, doing it with more private face-to-face discussions, whether in person or via Zoom, rolling it out over time, explaining it with a degree of transparency.
Garg had laid off around 900 Better.com employees over a 3-minute Zoom call in early December, around 15% of the workforce. Better.com is a U.S.-based company that provides home ownership services. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
Maine is down hundreds and New York is down thousands of healthcare workers due to vaccine mandates. Now the 2 states are calling on the National Guard to help ease the staffing shortages. NTD's Grace Coulter has the details.
Maine has lost hundreds of nurses and healthcare workers due to the state's vaccine mandate, now facing a major worker shortage. Maine's Governor Janet Mills announced Wednesday she's activating the National Guard to assist in hospitals. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to block Mills' COVID-19 vaccine mandate back in October. Maine hospital systems told news outlets this resulted in hundreds of workers quitting or being fired. According to the state's healthcare executives, COVID-19 infections among staff and a national shortage of qualified workers have also contributed to the shortage. The CEO of Maine Health told reporters, "Our nation's lost over 500,000 healthcare workers who resigned, retired, or left the field in the last several months. And so there's a huge workforce crisis in our country." Up to 75 National Guard members will be deployed next week and will assist until the end of January. Also on Wednesday, the New York National Guard announced 120 Army medics and Air Force medical technicians have been deployed to ease staffing shortages. They're assisting in 12 long-term care facilities and nursing homes across the state. Governor Kathy Hochul ordered the mission on December 1st. Thousands of New York healthcare workers have lost their jobs or been placed on leave due to the state's vaccine mandate. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
The Labor Department says claims for unemployment benefits have dropped to a new low. Today, the department released its weekly Jobless Claims report. It found 184,000 claims for benefits were made in the week ending December 4th. The government says this is the lowest level in 52 years. Meanwhile, as of October, the nation had 11 million jobs available and not enough people to fill them. And airline fees for baggage and schedule changes have gone up quite a bit in the past few years. Now, lawmakers are pushing a bill to regulate airline fees to make sure they don't grow too much. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more.
U.S. airlines are collecting 5 times as much revenue from fees compared to a decade ago. In 2019, they raked in nearly $110 billion. That's up from $22 billion in 2010.
That's right. Before 2008, checking a bag was free. Remember those days? Now, $35 for the first bag and $45 for the second bag.
With hopes of putting an end to these rising fees, Democrat members in the House and in the Senate are introducing the Fair Fees Act. It would prohibit airlines from charging what they call unreasonably high fees for basic services like bags and schedule changes.
How do they get away with it? They can because they have near monopolistic power over the routes that they run.
The congressmen say to solve this, more government regulation and oversight is needed. And one part of these regulations that they're proposing would be to make sure that the fees are proportionate to the services being provided. We asked, how would they determine the baseline, the maximum amount that these fees can be? And they said this would be at the discretion of the Department of Transportation.
We're going to give to the Department of Transportation the power to be able to determine what is reasonable. Right now, everyone in our country knows it's unreasonable.
But how likely is it that the Fair Fees Act would pass and be signed by President Biden? Markey tells us the last time he introduced the bill, there was a Republican co-sponsor, Senator Roger Wicker. But this time, they have not yet secured any Republican sponsors so far. Markey tells us it's a bipartisan issue, so he's confident it will gain more support. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
And a few updates after the tragic Michigan school shooting that left 4 dead and 7 injured. Riley France was shot in the neck during the Oxford High School shooting. Today, her parents have filed 2 $100 million lawsuits against the Michigan School District. Authorities say that the deadly school shooting was entirely preventable. The lawsuits fault the school district's superintendent and school principal for assuring the parents of the school's safety. This despite knowing of disturbing social media posts and an online ammunition search by the accused shooter, Ethan Crumbley. Also, following the shooting, Michigan Democrats are proposing a magazine limit. They hope to pass a bill that would prohibit the sale or possession of a magazine that can hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. And drug overdoses in San Francisco, California have become an epidemic. The number of overdose deaths nearly tripled that of COVID deaths last year. NTD's Eileen Ang hears more from a San Francisco native.
San Francisco has a much bigger problem than COVID.
Bad is an understatement. I would say it is horrific. It is negligent. It is an epidemic in and of itself. And it was not always this way.
Jenny Shao, a San Francisco native, says drug overdoses have gotten much worse within the last 5 years.
Before, you were able to walk through the streets regardless of what neighborhood you were in, and you did not have to try and tiptoe over bodies, not knowing whether they were dead or alive. And also, you did not have to hopscotch through anything like drug paraphernalia, including needles. And you were not literally walking through a scene of, say, the Night of the Living Dead.
The city's data reveals there were 713 overdose deaths compared to 261 COVID-19 deaths in 2020. In July, San Francisco Mayor London Breed announced the city will invest $13.2 million to prevent drug overdose. Recently, city officials are pushing for safe injection sites as part of their overdose prevention program, which could start as soon as next spring. But according to Xiao, that's like putting a Band-Aid on the problem and fast-tracking a way to self-destruction.
The idea is sobriety, and that's the golden key. You do not want to be dependent on these drugs. And from what I understand of these harm reduction sites, as the city likes to call them, is that you are putting yourself at less risk of, say, overdose or harm. But nevertheless, you are still locked in that state of constantly abusing yourself and, so to speak, teetering on the border of death.
Xiao says the city needs to invest in more mental health programs. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
Democratic Senator Ed Markey tells NTD the U.S. has a responsibility, not just as the economic and military leader, but as the moral leader of the world, to shine a spotlight on human rights violations. This comes amid a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics and President Biden's Democracy Summit. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
The White House on Monday announced a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics, meaning the U.S. won't send officials to the Games next February. Senator Ed Markey tells NTD a diplomatic boycott can draw international attention to human rights abuses in China.
And that's in large part because of what is being inflicted upon the Uyghurs. It's a statement about American human rights and how important it is for us to have our voice be heard and to shine a spotlight on what the Chinese are doing through our diplomatic boycott. The whole world then pays more attention to what is happening to these oppressed people.
Reports show that the Chinese Communist regime has arbitrarily detained over 1 million Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang region. Detainees say they experience forced labor, forced sterilization, and systematic abuse. A number of clothing brands this year have cut cotton supply from Xinjiang over concerns of forced labor. The senator explains what he thinks the U.S. can do.
It would be to really ensure that there is accountability, that we're taking note of the exploitation of Uyghur workers, and that we're not going to be willing conspirators in this effort to in any way oppress the Uyghurs. And we're just going to separate ourselves from anything that the Chinese are doing in terms of the products which are created. We don't need them being sold, and we won't allow them to be sold to American consumers.
The senator says it's important for the U.S. to shine a spotlight on every human rights violation, whether it be religious persecution, forced labor, or forced organ harvesting, all of which are taking place in communist China. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Apple Airtags help you keep track of things. You just attach the AirTag device to your keys or your TV remote, and you'll see its location on your phone. But Canadian thieves are apparently using them to steal luxury vehicles. Police say they attached the AirTag to a parked car and track its location so they can steal it later. Since September, there have been 5 instances of AirTag-related car thefts in the southern Ontario, York region. If you own a luxury vehicle, you may want to consider using a radio frequency detector to find potentially hidden AirTags. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.